Bubbling, coming in, crushing this. Alright. Last video, I did Aries rising, 2nd, 8th, 5th, and 11th houses. That only leaves 4 more houses left for Aries rising. These are the mutable houses. Okay, 3rd house we'll begin with. This is like what's always around. So you have like when you're getting to your home, right? So it associates with things like neighborhood. It's almost like, look at it this way. We have the 9th house, which if you look at house joys, the sun exalts in the 9th house because it's almost like purpose. It associates with higher learning. Like the sun is a more liberal planet, like bringing in the new, versus the moon being a more conservative planet, connecting you to the old. So it's almost like the sun connects with your purpose, right? So how, like when you premeditatively act, that is the sun. That is how you're choosing to express yourself. So that has to do with like going anew. Like obviously you can choose to act in a way that keeps you in your memories, like in your past, right? But generally it is a very, like it's an active thing versus the moon being a more receptive thing. So when you think about the house joys, one of the things I liked about the sun being in the 9th house is it almost associates higher learning and what you resonate with spiritually in your path, what you're looking up to, what you're trying to learn, like what you're trying to be in tune with, not necessarily what you're trying to see, but like what your purpose is, or not what you're trying to be seen as, but really what you're trying to be a part of, like what you look up to. So when you think about it that way, it's almost like the 3rd house is where you're coming from, like the re-energy, like the neighborhood, the person, place, things that are always there. So it's almost like associated with the moon in a way. Whereas the 9th house is associated with going out, like expanding yourself, all right? So when we have the 3rd house of just things that you kind of know, things that you're used to, things that you do every day, for Aries rising, this is Gemini. So to me, like, in my opinion, because Gemini is opposite of Sagittarius, right? It's not necessarily like meaningful, right? It's just having fun with it. And this is mutable air ruled by Mercury. So this is almost like having the ability to have thought forms or communicate or relate well with just kind of what's around, because it's a mutable way. This is the most relatable sign in the coldest way. Like I would say, Libra is less relatable because it has to do with what it's passionate about. Aquarius is like individualistic since the Uranus, the co-ruler. So it's more, personally, I think it's more unrelatable because you have to be coming from it, from the Aquarius's perspective, in order to relate, right? Just like the Libra. Like the Libra is going to support what it values, and it's going to do that with structure. So if you fall in line with what it values, great, right? But if you don't, you best believe that Libra is going to talk some shit about you. So once you get to the Gemini, it's like the Libra would be the one to talk shit about your face because they don't respect what you're doing, but the Gemini would just have fun with you. They wouldn't care. They'd be receptive to what you have to say, so they would be able to be the most relatable, but it wouldn't be like they really connect with it. They're having fun, if that makes sense. So it's almost like the Aries rising 3rd house is saying, well, this is what's going to be around. Like, let's have fun with it, you know? Like, let's just have fun with it mentally, you know what I mean? Let's play with it in the mental realm. It's almost like dreamy, but in a logical sort of way. Like, yeah. Anyway, so that would be their 3rd house, so kind of what's always around. So yeah, I feel like because they're very fiery, it's like what is always around is the fact that they're just kind of like communicatively, like reacting and then just throwing it out there, like just popping up, you know what I mean? Whereas like now we get to the 10th house, they're higher learning. This is Sagittarius, so this is mutable fire. So this is like acting and expressing and feeling just like the Aries, but in a mutable way. So this is like Sagittarius is like getting sucked into all the things, like getting sucked into the play. It's almost like Pisces, mutable water, where it gets sucked into things emotionally, but this gets sucked into things actively, like more, it's just doing them. Like, it got caught up doing a heist because its buddies were just about it, and this is the type of person that, like, its buddies get fucked up, but because it's so mutable with its actions, it somehow avoids, like, all the bullets. It doesn't make anything from it, but it just had this really deep experience that now it's got to sit back and think to itself, like, well, fuck, you know? So it's like, because it's ruled by Jupiter, which is what you resonate with spiritually. So this is going to be when you attach your own reasonings and meanings to those things that are more so unexplainable. Like, you just got sucked into. You're just like, what the fuck? And then you're just like, well, and then it goes to your spiritual nature. So in the 9th house, this is almost like when it has to do with higher learning, there's almost a lot of experiences of getting sucked up into things. So it's almost like they thought they wanted to do one thing. They thought they were interested in one thing spiritually, but at first, right? But then they ended up getting sucked into that, and then they start realizing what they actually correlate with that, and then they and then it like expands on who they are spiritually. So it gives that sense of higher learning. But it's almost like at first, it's almost like they would have aimed for the stars. They would have had high dreams, had that Jupiterian, what they resonate with, and what they're getting like what they're actively going out there and getting lost into, like based on themselves and their actions, their mutable fire. So it's like they go out there at first and they don't know what the fuck they're doing, but they're like, this is what I gotta do, and they get trapped into a bunch of shit. So, and then they realize, no, like that's not what I was supposed to do. That's not what I resonate with. So this is the person, but they really felt like they should have went out there. So this is the person that, like, because that has to do with purpose, the 9th house. So they felt it was their purpose to go out there and act like that stupid hooligan robbing that bank. Like, they felt a tie to it. And then they realize, because they get sucked into a bunch of these positions, unless they're a really strong spirit, that aren't beneficial, that no, that's not what they should have resonated with. But eventually I feel like this would be a person with a deep sense of purpose. 9th house Sagittarius is perfect. 9th house purpose is they have a lot of experiences that can teach them deeply feeling fire about what they should resonate with. So this is someone who growing up may have had like a lot of different purposes that may have been not beneficial, may have been harmful, like they may have got lost into a bunch of things, lost in the light, but that really teach them growing up, so that once they're like their own individual, it's like they know their sense of purpose. Like they ain't lost, they've been through that, you know what I mean? So that's Aries' 9th house. Now if we go to the 6th house, so 6th house, Aries rising is Virgo. It's ruled by Mercury. So this is almost like the things that you kind of gotta do. These are the things that creep up on you. And also like developing a sense of structure for something. Because one of the things that I heard by Dolo the Pilot Man is like the first house, or not the first house, the second house is like planting the seed, getting attached to that thing. Like this fixed earth, this is what I love, right? And then the 5th house is like watering that seed, making sure you're in a routine and pattern so you can keep that alive. And then the 10th house is like reaping the benefits from that, seeing the dream, like realizing it, you know what I mean? So 5th house having Virgo here, this is good, because this is like Virgo is Mercury over Earth. So this understands all the ways that things practically can break down or work, right? There's like a yin and the yang, break down or work. So it's like Virgo understands how things are going to break down, which is where that anxious energy comes from. But it also is like the magician. It understands how to utilize that. So having it here, it's like when you gotta develop a routine and pattern to watch something shine, it's like this person is gonna know how to do that, but they may obsess over that because they may think, well, like it could break down this way, it could break down that way. So it's like this could be someone that like spends too much time on the practical element maybe, and gets lost into making sure every little detail is correct. But at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do, like water it each day, you know what I mean? Keep on top of that. But it does seem like this is the person that does understand how things work practically. So when you're dealing with putting things into a routine and pattern, this person would understand how to do that. It may be a lot. Like, to them, they may be like, just like over-analyzing. Like, they know how to do it, but it's like, was that right? Like, kind of OCD type of energy. Like, is this going to grow? You know what I mean? So that would be like the 5th house. So this would be a person when they're developing like their health issues and stuff like that. They're able to do it, but they may get lost in it, okay? So, yeah, 5th house. Now, we go to the 12th house, Pisces. Okay, so this has to do with just kind of what catches up with you in like the public world. So when you experiences things that you just can't pass through, right? Is like kind of like 12th house things. Like limitations from like a more spiritual perspective. So it's almost like when you have views of reality that aren't necessarily correct but limit you and put yourself in a spiritual space to where you think you can't do that, or it is actually like, you know, this is not the realm for that, and then you have this sort of limitation in your mind, like you just kind of got to work with that, like you got to work from there in a way, because the 12th house in the joy system was ruled by Saturn, so it almost has to do with like pessimism, like you're just kind of stuck dealing with this. It's almost like 5th house is like physical health and 12th house is like mental health, which kind of associates with Pisces, which would be in the Aries rising 12th house. So this would be getting sucked up into things emotionally. So this is almost like the person that first they discover a limitation, they go into that. Like they figure out, like they had like with the robbing the bank scenario, right? They thought that was the shit, right? They figured out that didn't work, and they're not the motherfucker that performs these heists, you know, like some other motherfucker that they dreamed they were. This is the person that, like, they were all in. They thought they were that motherfucker, but when they actually did it, they got sucked into something emotionally, and they realized, well, shit, like that wasn't my purpose, you know what I mean? And so that comes into the 12th house Piscean energy to where when things aren't going their way, when they experience their limitations, they can get lost in that, okay? Which can be good because when you can really, really feel something, like this is an obsessive like Scorpio, it's not feeling what you want to feel. This is Pisces, so this is just feeling what you're brought into, mutable water. So this is like anytime something goes wrong is you really get sucked into that, right? So that means this is the person that just feels deeply. Like this is deep feeling when it comes to loss and restriction, right? So this is the person that once they do that first bank heist and they realize that loss and restriction is they're going to take that deep and they're going to resonate with that spiritually. So either they're going to be like, oh shit, like this is a part of life. We live to die. And they're going to do it again because now they develop their own reasoning and meaning to why they went through that. Or they're going to say, like when you do deep stuff and you don't think about the future, you know what I mean? You don't try to develop any sense of structure and security. Like this is what throws you under, and they're going to have some sort of spiritual or philosophical reason for why they were put in that place. So to me, this is like having a deep way of dealing with limitations in a way. So it's like they're going to have a really deep connection towards what limits them, which makes sense considering they're in Aries rising, and if you're ruled by Mars, limits you don't fuck with. So it's like your connection to limits is a strong one, if that makes sense, because it's like, whereas like other signs may be like, well, yeah, like I wasn't trying to do that. Aries like, my dreams, I can't accomplish my dreams. And so it takes that deeply when it can't break boundaries. So it's almost like that. It's been through it. So it's almost, once you've been through that enough, things don't phase it. It's willing to get hurt. It understands that energy. It's willing to dive into that emotional loss or that emotional situation. But yeah, but I feel like this is someone who could be either like emotionally like lost if they never deal with it, because they could be lost in the fact emotionally that they're limited, or this could be someone that realized early on that there are emotional limits and learned how to overcome that, but it still has to do with Pisces in the 12th house getting sucked up into things emotionally and taking them deeply when it has to do with limits and things that you can't necessarily like, things that you just kind of got to sit with and go through. Okay. So, hell yeah. That was Aries, 3rd house, ninth house, 5th house, or 6th house, sorry, and 12th house. Bubbling, coming in, crushing this art.